Dice Tower Tonight, episode some number that I'm not aware of, and Eric's
36.
microphone's not working. Ah, there's a 6 involved. Welcome to Dice Tower Tonight, a video show about board games and especially the people who play them. On tonight's episode, Eric and I are going to be talking to one another. Maybe, if Eric's microphone starts working. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking to the chat, and Eric's going to be hanging out silently in the background, and it won't be awkward at all. Don't worry, everyone. I am one of your hosts, Crystal Pisano, and joining me now is the Charlie Chaplin of board games, Eric Summerer.
Seriously.
Oh, apologies, chat, everyone else. I'm kind of doing this on the fly, as always. It seems like this show tends to be plagued with technical difficulties. Honestly, any live streaming tends to be plagued with technical difficulties, and we are not immune to that. So Eric is currently working on his situation, which we've been doing for the past 25 or so minutes, and he's working real hard, and it's not his fault. If anyone has done live content before, they know that sometimes things just don't work and we don't know why, and that's okay. We're still going to have a great show tonight. I promise I will let you know, Eric, if I can hear you.
Yeah, no.
What's interesting is it's switching to your video, at least on my side of things, when you're talking. Yeah, even on the stream, it's switching to you like it can hear you. So Google can hear. Oh,
Google can hear me.
Wait, chat says they can hear you.
Oh, that's nice. Maybe it's just your problem.
Interesting. Is it on my end? How is that possible?
Well, that will make things
okay. Maybe it's me. I broke everything. Okay. Backing it up, we're going to figure out what's wrong with my computer then and why I can't hear anything. Oh, that's funny. That's literally been me the whole time?
Yeah, probably. It took me 15 minutes to restart my computer.
Okay, well, this is amusing. So Eric, talk to the chat, and I'm going to stop talking for a moment.
Hey, chat. How's it going? Crystal and I are back from the Dice Tower cruise, which was one of the things we wanted to talk about today. I had a great time, brought my wife, and we played a bunch of games. But what I wanted to talk about, and maybe Crystal can join in once she can hear me again, is how we sort of struck a balance between doing gaming things and doing, cruise things, non-gaming things, balancing the non-gaming aspect of the trip.
I can hear you.
You can hear me.
It's literally been me the whole time. I'm so sorry. I'm the literal worst. I am the literal worst. There was no way for me to know because Google wasn't telling me anything.
I find that humorous.
No, it's not humorous. It's annoying because I made you mess with your microphone for 20 minutes for no reason.
Well, what I've learned is, it took like 15 minutes to restart the computer. And that is way too long. We found this problem and I tried to solve it like 15, 20 minutes ago.
No, it literally, for whatever reason, things diverted to a speaker that doesn't exist on my computer. For this specifically. And I looked and it's not because I thought, oh, maybe it's to go into my VR headset. Nope, that wasn't it. So I don't know what speaker it made up, but that's where it was sending the audio apparently.
Excellent. Well, anyway, we're all together now. We're with it. We can hear each other. This is great. It's good to see you. It was great to see you in person. Just last week? Last week on the Dice Tower cruise. Which was a blast, and what I was wanting to bring up and talk about is how we balanced playing games, which is what we were there to do, but also all the other stuff that we had planned and that we decided to impulsively do on the ship, and find that balance between having a vacation and a gaming vacation.
It is an interesting balance to strike, and I will preface my comments with saying that this was only my second cruise ever. And my first Dice Tower cruise or gaming cruise of any kind. So I've been on one cruise that I treated like a normal vacation and then on this. And the differences to me were surprising at first until I kind of dwelled on them a little bit because I think cruises in general tend to be more relaxing as far as vacations go. And I think the benefits of cruises over other vacations are in that you don't have to deal with a lot of the logistics that you have to deal with on a normal vacation. You don't have to decide, oh, where are we going today? How are we getting there? What food are we going to eat? Is that restaurant open? All of those things that you normally have to deal with on a regular vacation are all just taken care of for you on a ship. Your hotel and all of your restaurants and all of your activities are all in one place. And so it makes it very stress-free. For a gaming cruise, it's a board game convention that happens to be on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
So I was having a hard time. Like, I wanted to do cruise stuff, but I also wanted to game, and you couldn't really do both at the same time. And since I haven't cruised a whole lot, I still want to take part in those cruise activities. I did not end up doing that. I ended up gaming more often than not. But
Okay.
I think that was still fun. And I think this is a really good option. Something like the Dice Tower cruise or a board game cruise is a wonderful option for a family who some of the members of which love to game and others of which maybe aren't as keen into gaming, because there's tons of other things you can do. If you took your family to a regular board game convention, so like let's say BGG Con, for example, which like was located at a place in Texas that didn't have a ton of other stuff directly around it, that might be tough for other members of your family. Whereas the cruise is great. The other members of your family can go do whatever they want all the time, and you can play as much board games as you want. And it's perfect in that way. So I think that it's really good for families who have diverse tastes in the amount of gaming they want to do.
Right. There were times that my wife wanted to play games, and she would often join me for maybe one game in the morning or after dinner. But then other times she could go knit by on deck. She found a nice shady spot on deck where she could knit and hang out there. Or she made a friend on the literary group that was on the ship with us, and
Oh,
they
wait,
hung
hold
out
on. I'm
for a
sorry. I'm
little
going to
while.
have to stop you there, Eric. You should tell the chat about this literary group that was on the ship with us.
Okay, so there was they called it a readers and authors group. That we didn't have the entire ship as the Dice Tower cruise. There were other groups, and the second largest group I think on the ship was this readers and authors group. They weren't all romance authors, but there were some on the ship, and some of the folks in our group, Jason and Tom included, really wanted to get me to interact with this group since I have done some romance audiobooks. They thought it would be really funny if maybe somebody knew who I was. None of them knew who I was, but we did interact with a few of them, had lunch with a few, and actually made a friend or two, which was pretty cool. And so Steph hung out with one of them and actually snuck her into our closing night game show on the cruise.
That's pretty exciting. And yeah, a lot of people on the ship seemed a little befuddled by our group in general. Just like, wait,
Sure.
why are there people with board games everywhere? Because
Yes.
yeah, the total ship number, I don't know if this is right, is 3,400 accurate for the whole ship?
I think that sounds right. And we had about 600. So
Yeah.
what, that's 20% almost? That's a good sized number of people on the
It
ship.
is.
It feels like we spread out more than in years past. It used to be that there's a conference center, which is like the main hub of the gaming, where the library is. And it's just a large room, and it's way down on deck 2 of the ship. It's really out of the way. If you'd have to look for it to stumble upon it. But there were a lot more gaming spaces that were in regular areas of the ship, like the main dining hall we had for certain areas, certain portions of the day. The buffet restaurant was ours for a certain portion of the evening. And so people just wandering around in the ship would see folks playing games. And I saw lots of shots of our group teaching games or introducing games to folks who were not in our group, which was pretty neat as a sort of an evangelical aspect of the trip. That were a lot of exposure to board gaming outside of our group.
Absolutely. And I think that that's really neat that the people in our group took it upon themselves to do that. Like, if you see somebody interested in something, it's nice to share it with them. And obviously, we're always looking for new gamers to join the hobby.
Yes, indeed. It was. I mean, that was a terrific trip. You mentioned relaxation. That was definitely an aspect of this. Got a lot of games played, but also, like I said, took time off. I think we enjoyed having meals. Taking our time to have meals in the dining hall, having the fancy breakfast rather than just running to the buffet. Um, and doing the excursions on the shore days and actually getting off the ship. I was disappointed because my roller coaster was broken. I
Wait,
had
your
tickets.
roller coaster? Oh,
What
oh yeah, yeah, for on Haiti, right?
in Haiti, they had a what's called a mountain coaster, which is like a self-driven, self-braking roller coaster, and I had tickets to ride this thing all day long. That was my plan. I was just going to ride it until they kicked me off, and got a phone call the night before that the motor was broken, and so I'd be getting a refund, but I was not going to get to ride the roller coaster. So it was a little disappointing. But we did go have nice high tea in Jamaica, which was also
Oh, high tea. That's so
oh
fancy.
yes,
And
indeed.
I actually got to, in Jamaica, Restoration Games, who was one of the sponsors of the Dice Tower cruise. So shout out to Restoration Games. Everybody give them a big thank you. They actually sponsored an excursion on Jamaica and sent 50 people from the cruise on this excursion for free. So Restoration Games paid the way for 50 people to go on this excursion. And Sam and I were kind of heading up one of the groups, and Jason was heading up the other one. I don't remember who else was in Jason's group. But yeah, like it was called Climbing a Waterfall. It's Dunn's River Falls in Jamaica, and you're literally walking up a waterfall.
I
Like,
heard this was more strenuous than you imagined at first.
okay, so strenuous might not be the right word. I'm a rather klutzy person, and it seems like if your guide isn't incredibly deliberate in telling you where to step at every moment, if you're me, that does not go well. So I'm not like, our guide seemed to kind of think that we had it, and maybe some people did. I did not. I'm really good at picking the rocks that are either the slipperiest or non-existent under the water, and therefore I fell a bunch of times. And I was okay physically. I got some bumps and bruises, but nothing serious. I felt bad because I was making other people feel bad for me, because they just kept seeing me fall and just being like, "Oh my gosh, Crystal, are you okay?" the whole time. And I was always just like doing that awkward thing where you like pull yourself up and pull yourself together really fast, even though you kind of want to take a moment and just be like, no, I'm fine. Let's just go, keep going. So it all turned out fine in the end. And we got some great pictures of the whole group. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so I just wanted to give a thank you to Restoration Games for sponsoring that, because it was a very neat experience to climb a waterfall.
Nice. So moving on to some games that we've played recently. I think we both have games that we played on the cruise. Would you like to go first?
Sure. So unfortunately, while this is a video medium, the games that I want to talk about, I don't own yet, although both of the games I'll discuss, I plan on buying in the near future. And actually, I'm going to see if I can share my screen so I can at least show you guys something, which is over here, screen share. So I will share my screen with you all right now. So the first game I'm going to talk about is Architects of the West Kingdom. This is a 2018 release from Renegade, I believe. Is it Renegade? Oh gosh, I should have looked that up. Here, let's look, everyone, while I'm showing the picture. Who is it? No, it's Blue Orange. Is it Blue Orange? Is that what's on the box? Who is it by? Somebody in the chat will correct me. Oh, it's Renegade. Okay, good. Oh, I feel better about myself. I didn't look it up and I still remembered. So Architects of the West Kingdom is a worker placement game. And the way that it differentiates itself from most worker placement games is, rather than starting with only a couple of workers and adding more as the game progresses, you start with all of your workers, a whole mess of workers. And you still only place one per turn. But there's a bunch of different places you can go, and you also have a level of purity is not the right word, but basically how good you are. Your virtue, I believe, your virtue rating, which is on the left side of the board, those purple numbers there. And if you have a low virtue, or lower virtue, you can go to the black market and get really cool stuff. But you also might get negative points at the end of the game. If you have a really high virtue, you cannot go to the black market, but you'll probably get some victory points at the end of the game because they're rewarding you for your virtuous behavior. Basically, this is pretty generic as worker placement games go in the mechanics. You're collecting resources and you're getting people that will help you do better things with those resources. What's neat, though, is you can actually capture other people's workers. They sometimes get sent to the watchtower, which is up in the top right corner of the board, and you can actually steal people's workers and put them on your own board in front of you at times, and then people have to potentially pay to get their workers back. But again, since you started with all of your workers, that's not like a huge deal most of the time. So you've still got plenty to work with, so you can just be like, okay, he took my workers, I'll just leave them there for a little while and whatever else. The game progresses. It's victory point based. Most points wins. I've only played it the one time. And honestly, considering how generic the theme is, I'm surprised at how much I liked this one. I do enjoy worker placement as a mechanic, but often I'm looking for an experience that's a little bit more thematic than this one. This was just darn enjoyable to play. I really liked it. I'm going to play it some more and see if I continue to enjoy it. My husband, who was on the cruise with me, played this one too, and he also really enjoyed it. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so excited about it, because he doesn't play games as often as I do. So when he's excited about a thing, I want to play it more too, because it's always nice to play something that we both enjoy. So that is Architects of the West Kingdom, a worker placement game that I say is definitely worth checking out. And I will stop screen sharing.
That's very cool. I totally understand the the spouse enjoying a game. My wife, this isn't the one I was planning to talk about, but my wife played the Quacks of Quedlinburg and really enjoyed that one, and so I've gone to go get a copy so that she can play it more. The ones I was planning to talk about, I have two Freedom and Freeze games, and I actually do have these with me. The first we're going to talk about is Fine Sand. This is a Fable game. It's from Stronghold Games and Freedom and Freeze. It is a deck deconstruction game about building sandcastles. So every player has a deck. Actually, I should have pre-opened this bag, but you have a deck of 30 cards, and they come in different flavors. Like this one's going to let you draw more cards, but it costs 4 to build, and this one is on my keyboard now. This one's going to let you build more cards on a turn, and it costs 5 to build. The object is to build or get rid of all of your cards, or as many as you can by the end of the game. Everybody's got one of these boards. Ta-da! And it's very simple as far as the order in which you're doing things. In fact, this is a simultaneous play game. It's not a speed game, but everybody takes their turns at once. You've got a little token that you put into the center when you begin a round, and everybody does their thing, and then you take the token back when you're done. So you don't have to ask, are you done? Are you still working? Whose turn is it? Are we waiting for you? You know,
I hate those moments, so that's awesome.
You know that as long as the tokens are still in the center, you're still playing, and then everybody moves on to the next thing. So the first thing you do, it's very clear, you draw cards, and the more cards you stack under here, as you build more, you're going to draw more cards in this step. That's mandatory. Then you've got either 2A or 2B. You're going to build cards, and this tells you how many things you can build. There's possible discounts you can get. And then 2B is you draw more cards. I don't have enough to build something, so I'm going to build more, or I'm going to draw more cards. And then 3 is you check your hand limit. You can also build more cards here to increase that hand limit. There's another mechanism where you can get rid of trash. You can get rid of cards in your hand that you don't want, and you can do that once per turn. And it goes in like a trash pile. And one of the things you check at the end of every round is, does everyone have something in the trash pile? If they do, that top card from the trash pile moves to your neighbor. But if not everyone has done that, then all those cards stay put. And so if one player is not trashing stuff can just get, piling up in these cards, and those aren't counting toward your hand and your deck and everything. And you continue until somebody draws all their cards into their hand. And that triggers endgame, and then whoever has the fewest cards in their entire deck wins. The reason it's a Fable game is that there's another set of cards that you work your way through from game to game. So each time you play after the first game, you remove 3 cards and add 3 more prescribed cards from this deck into everyone's deck. So everyone's still playing with the same assortment of cards, but now you've added more variety, crazier cards, more difficult, tricky cards. And I think there's where the real interest is. I like this game. I like its speed. I like how everybody's moving at the same time. I like its simplicity and clarity in its graphic design. But what I really want to explore is that Fable deck, which I have not gotten into because I've always played with new players and I haven't been able to introduce the new cards yet. Because I think the basic game can get a little samey. There's sort of a prescribed order in which you want to build things, but when you add these new cards in, that's going to shuffle things up every time. So big hit with me. Fine Sand. This one's sticking around.
That's really interesting. I actually still haven't tried any of the Fable series games yet. And that one sounds interesting. Like deck building is not something I typically enjoy, but deck deconstruction sounds a little bit more up my alley. And I don't know if I've played any deck deconstruction games, at least none that come to mind. So that sounds pretty interesting. All right, so the next game that I'm going to talk about is another one that I tried for the first time on the cruise. It has been one that's been on my radar now for quite some time, and Tom has actually talked about it quite a bit on the Dice Tower channel through various videos, and I know he reviewed it just probably a few months ago, not too long ago, and that is Chronicles of Crime, which is a 2018 release from Lucky Duck Games. So I'm going to do a screen share again so you all can see some stuff while I'm talking. And we're going to do that. Apologies, it's not taking up the whole screen, but you can kind of see what's going on. So Chronicles of Crime is an app-driven board game that has a number of these boards and some cards in it. And you are literally detectives trying to solve mysteries. There are a number of scenarios that come in the base box for the game. But what's cool is the majority of the components are made in a way that they could be used for lots of different things. I'm going to look through the things here and see if I can. So yeah, like you can see in this photo here, like one of these little white cards says high-tech devices. This one says blood and organs. Like high-tech devices could mean any number of things. So these cards could be interpreted in a bunch of different ways and therefore used in different scenarios in different ways. When you're working a case in a scenario, you use your phone to scan QR codes on all of the cards. And then you progress through the case based on what you find. And the app tells you information about, like, when you question a suspect, what they tell you. And what's neat is when you question a suspect, the app doesn't just give you all of the information. You have to go to the location where that person is by scanning the code on that location. Then you have to scan that person to say that you're talking to them. Then if you want to question them, you have to scan the code of another item or person in the game to ask them about that item or person. So it doesn't completely drive you down the path. It just gives you little bits and pieces and lets you wander a bit aimlessly with them. Now, I will say the tutorial tells you exactly where to go and what to do because it's teaching you the mechanics of the game. But going forward, it gives you a starting point and then kind of lets you go from there. And what I've put on the screen here, one of the coolest parts is there is an add-on for this game that is the set of VR glasses that you can attach to your phone. It works with, I believe, any device that has the app on it. You just clip these little glasses to your phone and you hold the glasses up to your face and it looks like you're looking in a VR device. And since I have a little new experience with VR, since I have an Oculus Rift now, I can say that this is actually pretty legit as far as like a quick and easy VR experience. So when you want to look for clues in a location, you don't have to use the VR app. You can just use a phone and scroll around with your finger. But when you do the VR, you actually are, here, I'll actually put this back to me. So you're wearing the glasses on your device, on your phone, and you can physically look around. You can look down and up and 360 degrees all around in the environment you're in to search for clues. And then based on what clues you find, you pull cards out of the deck, and now you'll have more items to work with when you're questioning suspects, going to new locations, etc. I know not everybody likes app-driven board games. I am a fan in general. I love app integration in games. I think it opens up a whole new dimension of what board games can do and what they can be. And this one is great. And guess what? When they add new scenarios, they can just do it in the app. They don't even have to give you new components. I mean, I'm sure they probably will at some point because why not? but you can literally just download new content and play new scenarios. I've only played the tutorial and the first scenario. Beyond that, I loved them so much. I'm very excited to try more of this. Yeah, so Chronicles of Crime gets a huge thumbs up from me. I have not tried Detective, which is the counterpart that other people, it's not by the same publisher, but it kind of came out around the same time, and a lot of people were comparing them. I have not played that one yet, so I can't compare those two. But I'm curious to try Detective, but I honestly think Chronicles is probably more my jam anyway, so I think I started with the right one for me.
I think based on what I've heard, that Chronicles would be my jam as well. I have no excuse. I still haven't gotten that one played.
You have an excuse, Eric. There are too many games. And by too many, I don't actually mean too many, because I'm very excited about how many games there are, but there's too many games to get played.
Yes. This is still on my I really want to play this list, but it hasn't reached the top yet. Anyway. Last one for me is another Freedom and Freeze, and it's a larger box, Futuropia. Let me back it up a little bit so you can actually see. There we go. It's got, all these sort of utopian, images. The idea is that this is the future, and you are trying to create a society where people don't need to work.
Well, that sounds lovely.
Yeah, I mean, you start out. Let me grab one of these. There's a million bags in here. This is it is ridiculous. I was actually going to get to this, but it's very difficult to sort and organize this game. There's just a ton of stuff in here. But everybody starts out with a condo complex. So you've got this condo complex. Hello. And it has an energy cost to run it, and it's got 3 little living spaces for people. Also, you start out with some factories that go below these living spaces. So this one's going to make energy that will help you run not only your living spaces, but any robots you get that can put people out of work, because you want the people to be out of work. There's also some food producing factories. So you start out with a couple food producing factories and a energy producing factory and people to staff them. But you want to get robots, and you want to feed the people, and you want to run your stuff. You've got 5 action tiles, and on your turn, you will use one of these 5 action tiles. One of them is just going to get you money. It's just a subsidy tile, and every time you do that, there's a little tracker that moves forward. So I may get $14, but after a couple turns, you may be able to get $15. That gradually goes up and up and up as you go. This one lets me buy some robots. That's what those are. But every time I buy robots, I then have to run my energy production. So I have to pay in energy tokens for all of my robots and all of my buildings. I can also buy an energy producing factory. Then I get energy. I sort of run the factory and get those energy tokens. Same thing with the input and output of the food. I can buy one of those food factories and run all of my food factories and get food. And then I can invite more people into my condo, maybe buying more room for them, but then I have to feed them all. And then, so you're managing all of this food and energy and trying to track it all and make room for everybody and expand, and you're gaining and losing points based on how what size buildings you've got. There's this market for these factories, kind of like Power Grid. As the technology gets better, you move farther along in the game. Things get more expensive, but they also become more efficient. Maybe taking up 3 spaces, or taking up only 1 or 2 spaces instead of 3 spaces to produce the same amount of energy or food. I like the mechanisms. I like the challenge. I like just the thinky nature of this whole thing. But this whole box is really fiddly. There's, like I said, it's hard to store. Those buildings come in different sizes, and it's not just that like all of the early buildings are 3 wide. No, there are some that are 2, and then others that are 3, and then ones that are 1, and then the 2s come back, and then there's 3s. So you can't even just store them in order. You have to basically sort the whole thing every time you play. And it's also difficult with these differing sizes to figure out whether a slot has a robot and a person in it. And if you still have room for the person, if the person then has to go over here and work over here. And and you're supposed to only have enough room for one slot per person, and you can only have so many empty spaces. And figuring that out is a little hard to just wrap your head around because not every slot is filled with one robot and one person. It's not that complicated, but it's just a little too difficult to wrap your head around in just making it all work. And that's my real reservation here is I think Power Grid, which is a similar weight and similar sort of style game, is easier to understand and wrap your head around and will ultimately be a smoother experience. While I'm fascinated with this, I fear that this one's going to lose traction because it's going to be too difficult to grasp. So I'm worried about Futuropia. I'm being cautiously optimistic. I want to play more. There's lots of variant tiles and ways to make it more interesting and swap out tiles and factories and stuff. But I really worry that this one's not going to gain any traction because it's so difficult. It has such a steep learning curve. Anyway, that's Futuropia.
I will say that the theme interests me far more than Power Grids. I
Mm.
have played Power Grid, but only a handful of times. And the last time I played it was in 2007, I believe, maybe 2008. So it has been a very long time since I've played Power Grid.
Yeah, Power Grid's still one of my favorites, but it is another one I haven't played much lately. I need to get it to the table. I think it's one that my older son would enjoy.
It's one of those games that I always say, like, maybe I should play it again to see if I'll like it again. Like, when I was new to modern gaming, I honestly don't remember my thoughts on it from then, because I was just like, whole new world of games. I was just playing everything my friend had. I don't think it's my style of game, though, now knowing what I know about myself. But I also recognize it's a good game, and I kind of wish I had modern thoughts on it, but I don't. So I know that we usually play a trivia game here. Oh, wait, hold on. Before we move on, Eric, I do have to talk about one other game that you and I both played on the cruise. Because I taught you a game that you'd never played before. And you seemed pretty excited about it when I pulled it out.
The game is called Strike.
Maybe some people have heard of it.
It is a highly thematic game about gladiators in a bowl. And I had a blast with this. This is a very light, silly game. My wife was very upset to be sitting next to me because I had some very lucky rolls, and
you
and
were
I think
amazing. It was like magic.
The one of the mechanisms of the game is if you can clear the bowl, because you're trying to match values inside the bowl. So if I get 2 4s and 2 3s, and those are all the values in there, I get those dice. Plus, I've cleared the bowl, and that forces the next player to roll all of their dice, possibly losing all of them and knocking them out of the game. And that happened at least 3 times, right before my wife had to then throw all of her dice in the bowl. She was not a fan of me during that game, but I had a great time. I am sort of annoyed that Strike is difficult to find. I think it would be a good hit with my mom, who likes light games, and she'd be able to teach this at the senior center where she does a game night. I think that would work out really well. I guess it's worth looking into Impact and seeing if that might be a worthy substitute, but Strike is far superior, I think.
I mean, basically, so I have not actually played Impact, although I have seen it in person. The bowl shape is very different. It is more compact and taller, and it's also, instead of being an oval, it's a rounded rectangle.
Right.
But I'm not going to hate on it because it's available and Strike isn't. So I would say, if you're interested, get Impact. If it's available, get it. And no, it's not going to be the exact same experience as Strike, but you can play Strike with Impact. So I recommend it for that reason. And I will say, you clearing the bowl led to the most epic Strike moment I've ever had. And it is my most played game of all time. So that's saying something. You cleared the bowl, and Stephanie was next to you, and she had 3 dice in her hands, and she rolled them in, and they all came up X's, which means the gladiators die and they're eliminated from the game. So she eliminated herself, but in doing so also cleared the bowl again, which passed it to me. I had 5 dice, and I dropped them all in the bowl, and they were all 2s. So I got to pull all of them out and make the next person roll all of their dice. And what was really funny is we all had this big, like, moment when it happened, and Tom was nearby. And Tom was like, what's going on over there? Y'all are not supposed to be having all that fun. And I was like, 5 2s. And he was like, someone rolled 5 2s in a game. I've never seen that before. And I was like, okay, yes, technically without context, it does seem silly, but it was really good. I promise.
He was so unimpressed. Yes.
He was obviously poking fun at us like he often did on this show before we kicked him out of here. So
that's what happened.
Totally what happened.
Okay, so we did we're not going to do a game show today. I think we're going to shelve that for a little bit. I think it'll be back soon.
Yeah.
Because we like challenging each other. But we did have a topic that we'd been kicking around for a little while as something to talk about. And we just thought this would be a good time to bring it out. And we wanted to know, we asked ourselves, if you could come up with your dream game night, which celebrities would you want to play with? And what game would you play with them? So we've put together I guess we've put it in order, a top 5 list of celebrities and games to play with them. Crystal, would you like to go first or second?
I will go second. I will let you go first.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I'm going to start things off. My number 5 is Jorge Garcia, Hurley from Lost. I know he's a gamer, and I know he actually listens to the Dice Tower from time to time, which is pretty cool. But I would want to play some sort of game that has trading, negotiation in it. I guess I'll throw out Settlers just because that's the easy one that everybody sort of knows. But something that where we can sort of trade commodities back and forth. I just want some sort of interaction with Jorge. I think that would be a lot of fun. So that's my number 5, Jorge Garcia with Settlers.
I almost feel like we both should have started with our number 1s potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe not. We'll find out. Although, if we don't have at least one crossover on this list, I will be shocked. We did not share our lists with each other in advance.
No.
So, my number 5 is Lily Tomlin. I have loved Lily Tomlin as an actress since I was a very little girl. And she just turned 80, I believe, and she's still actively producing TV shows, or she's starring in TV shows on Netflix. She's in Grace and Frankie, and she is just as witty as she ever has been, and just seems like a delight as a person. So because she is so quick-witted and funny, I would want to play something like But Wait, There's More with her. I think some kind of a like improv style game where you have to come up with stuff on the fly would be amazing with her. And honestly, she just seems like a really cool lady to hang out with. So any excuse to be with her would be amazing. So that is why Lily Tomlin is my number 5.
That would be fun. My fear with playing an improv style game with any of these fantastic comedians is that they would run circles around me. My number 4 is John Hodgman. I would like to play something either deduction style with him, like Sleuth, but I'm thinking more Decrypto. I'd love to play Decrypto with John Hodgman. I love the way his mind works, and I think it would be really fun to have him try and think outside the box, because I think he would end up way outside the box, and that would be really neat. Challenging to play with John, but that would be a blast. Play Decrypto with John Hodgman.
Okay, so for my number 4, I dug back to my formative years, and I thought of who was basically my first celebrity crush. And it is a person that I still love his work to this day. And he seems like a cool person in general, and that is John Stamos. So when you said John, I was like, there's no way. And I was like, okay, John, that very different John. John Stamos is my number 4.
Okay.
I watched Full House growing up. I still watch Fuller House 4 seasons in on Netflix. I'm one of those people. But really, like, John Stamos has had a very diverse career. Ooh, here's a fun fact. I actually participated in a letter writing campaign to ABC in the early 2000s to save his horrible sitcom, Jake in Progress. No one remembers that show because it was really, really bad. And I actually am one of the reasons that they renewed it for season 2, and it only aired for one additional episode before they realized their mistake and canceled it outright. So, fun fact, that's how much I like John Stamos. But the game that I would want to play with John Stamos is Heartthrob.
Of course.
He was my crush when I was young. He's still looking great today, for that record. And honestly, I think he would approach the game Heartthrob with the right mindset. Like, he would be looking at the stock photography, and he would really be serious about it in the right way. So I think it would be a ton of fun to play Heartthrob with John Stamos, which is why he's my number 4.
That would be awesome. I thought you were going to say Dave Coulier.
I mean, you know what? Dave Coulier is also amusing, but I was not quite as enamored with him as a young lady. So
this goes into your Lily Tomlin and my comment about being totally outmatched if this were to happen. But I'd love to play Encore, the musical party game, with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Ooh, that's good.
So, just hearing interviews with Lin, he is such a scholar of music and styles. I mean, he's known for his hip hop musicals, but he is so well versed in musical theater and other styles of music. He would be a blast to play this game with. And it, I know he would destroy me. I would want to be on his team, but it would be great entertainment to play Encore with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I think I would literally hang out and do anything with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Like, if we were staring at paint drying, I think that would still be amusing because he's just that amazing of a person.
Yes.
And he's not showing up on my list, but there's a reason why. So I'll explain that when it becomes relevant. So my number 3 is Sonequa Martin Green. And not just because she happens to be in Star Trek Discovery, although obviously that has made me love her all the more. But she's a very talented actress, and she is a fan of board games as well. In fact, she is the organizer of board game nights for the Star Trek Discovery cast, and they play Mafia together. So she likes social deduction games quite a bit. So I think I would want to play Deception, Murder in Hong Kong with Sonequa Martin Green. I think she would be really good at that. And I am not generally as keen on games like Mafia and Werewolf. So even though I would totally, if she invited me to Mafia night, I'd go easily. But I think Deception is a game that I enjoy more, and I think she'd be really fun to play it with. And I will say, as an aside, I didn't want to pick more than one person from Star Trek for my list, but Mary Wiseman plays D&D, and I would love to play D&D with Mary Wiseman. So that's my bonus for number 3.
Yeah, I thought Mary Wiseman was going to make your list, but
people aren't going to know who Mary Wiseman is, I think, as much as Sonequa Martin Green. So I wanted to pick somebody that was a little more recognizable. But Mary Wiseman plays Tilly on Star Trek Discovery. She was in a show called Baskets. She's been in some other stuff, but she's not as recognizable. But she does play Dungeons and Dragons, which I think is really cool. And also, if she happens to be watching this ever at some point in the future, invite me to D&D night, please, Mary. I love you.
I think if I had to pick, it would be so hard to pick a Star Trek cast member to play with.
Oh, there's a lot. There's
Robert
a lot.
Picardo, I think, would be a blast.
He would be good.
That would be fun. Anyway, he didn't make my list. My number 2, I'd like to play Meeple Circus with Neil Patrick Harris.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because, he would be fun to hang out with no matter what. But there's the cards in Meeple Circus that have you doing particular activities in that last round, the performance round, where maybe you have to stand up and get applause or pretend to eat a sandwich, or every time something falls, you have to leap into the air. And he would be a blast to play those performance tasks with. It would just be a joy to hang out with Neil Patrick Harris and play Meeple Circus.
Man, that's so good. We should just combine our lists and start tweeting celebrities and make all of this happen.
That should be our goal for the next season of this show. That's
absolutely. Get a celebrity to play a game with us. I'm down.
There you go.
So my number 2, I know I said I picked people that were more recognizable, and I'm going to pick somebody whose name might not be recognizable to a bunch of you, but I could not leave her off the list, and that is Darcy Carden. who, if anyone watches The Good Place on NBC, she plays Janet on that show. And she is a gosh darn delight of a human being, both in her role as Janet and as a person. I actually started listening to The Good Place, the podcast, a few months ago, and she's been a guest on the podcast a number of times talking about her role in the show. And you can tell by the way she speaks that she is not only very thoughtful as a person and an actress, but just like good people in general. So the game that I would want to play with Darcy Carden is actually Fog of Love. There was, I won't spoil any of The Good Place for those of you who have not seen it, but there was a recent episode where she had to embody multiple personalities within a pretty short span of time. And she did that really well. And so it kind of made me think of Fog of Love, how you have to take on the persona of the person you're being in the relationship. It's a 2-player game. It feels like it would be intimate, but not in an uncomfortable way. And I think she would just be a really cool partner to play that game against. Or with, I guess is a more appropriate word other than against, since it's cooperative. But yeah, so I would love to play Fog of Love with Darcy Carden. And if you want to Google her name, there is an apostrophe after the D. So that will help you Google her.
Crystal, Darcy was my number 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the only reason she didn't make the top 5 is that I haven't seen too many interviews with her outside of character. And so I wasn't sure how she'd, react in a gaming situation. But yeah, she made my short list for sure.
You and we're cut from the same cloth, Eric.
Yeah, and I feel like we have the same number 1.
If we don't, this show is done.
So, Al Yankovic is the number 1 for me, and I'm imagining that he is for you as well. Now, I would want Al to play a game not on, because if you listen to interviews with Al, he sort of has his "I'm crazy" on persona, but then when you get him to calm down a little bit, he is one of the most intelligent people you can talk to. I would love to play something semi-serious with Al, like Gizmos, where you could actually have him sit down and actually interact with him and have a battle of wits with Al. That sure would be zany and crazy, but not have him have to be on all the time. Although it would be fun. I wrote down a second one for him. There's a game called Familienbond. It's an older German title about genetic manipulation. You've got all these they're aristocrats, and they have various crazy traits. And you're trying to get, say, big noses to work its way through the gene pool. So you have all these crazy illustrations of people with giant ears and big noses and giant eyes and just messed up physical features. And you're trying to get those features to work their way through marriages through the gene pool. And he would be a blast to play that with, because he'd name all of these, nosy McSchnoz face, and that would be fun to play with him. So even though I said I didn't want him to be on, I think I'd want him to be on for Familienbond. Anyway, that's my number 1, Mr. Yankovic.
And we're all shocked to hear that my number 1 is also Mr. Yankovic. And that is why I did not put Lin-Manuel Miranda on the list, which sounds odd if you're not aware of their friendship. But I figure if I invite Weird Al to a game night, like Jimmy Fallon and Lin-Manuel Miranda are just kind of part and parcel. Like they're just coming along for the ride.
Well, sure.
Because they're besties and it's adorable. So I actually picked a game where he would be a little bit on, because although I'd actually like your point about having something a little bit more serious and introspective. I would love to play Moods with Weird Al, which is a game where you are literally just reading random phrases based on a specific mood. And the mood is chosen randomly and the phrase is chosen randomly every round. And so you're saying ridiculous things in moods that wouldn't normally be associated with those things. So you might have to say like, "Oh no, I burned the pizza," but in a sexy voice or something. And I think he would be really, really good at that game. The game itself is kind of lackluster in that you're just moving around a board, but the act of doing the moods and the cards is really fun, and I think he'd be a blast with it. And it's pretty casual too, so maybe I'd actually get to talk to him a little bit in between, which would be wonderful. So my number one is also Weird Al Yankovic. Surprising, nobody in the chat.
I'm sure. But I think that's good. And, maybe one day we'll get one of these to actually happen.
I mean, I would love. I've gotten to meet him now. I'm not doing a VIP for his upcoming tour though. So I did actually. So when I was in Chicago for the last tour and I got to meet him, if it hadn't been so late at night, I was actually planning on attempting to ask him if he wanted to go to the board game cafe that was near the theater to play games after the fact. But it was like 11:30 at night and it was after the show, and I was like, there's just no way. Like, he's gonna go back to his tour bus and sleep because they're driving to another location tomorrow. So
All right, well, we have a few more minutes. We could go to the chat and answer some questions. I'm hearing I'm going robotic. Are you hearing the weird
yeah,
audio
you're
issue?
Mr. Roboto, and I think that's not my fault this time. I mean, whatever. We can still hear you and understand you, and we're close to the end of the show, so don't stress about it. But yeah,
all right.
Chat, first off, I would love to hear your celebrity and what game you'd like to play with them. And so feel free to drop those in the chat and we might shout a few of those out. No guarantees. And then if you have any questions for us about the cruise or games we've played recently or games from 2018 or upcoming plans, anything like that, feel free to ask away. But just know my monthly Q&A, which I do by myself, is actually this coming Sunday. So if you have lots of important questions for Eric, that's okay, because you'll have an opportunity to ask me some more questions on Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Dice Tower.
Excellent. Everybody's just talking about me being a robot. That's great.
I mean, maybe you are a robot and you've just been hiding it really well most of the time.
I've been talking all day, so yeah, that would make sense.
I will say, so it was weird for me because, like, since this was my first Dice Tower cruise and I was there as a representative of the Dice Tower, I was trying to do, like, not my job. Job sounds weird because I'm not, like, getting paid to be there. But like, I wanted to play games with as many people as possible. And it was tough because there's only so many hours in the day. And I think I added it up and I played games with somewhere between 35 and 40 different people over the course of the week, which honestly seems really impressive. But then I think about, like, we had 600 people in our group. So it's such a small piece. And I feel bad then because I didn't get to play games with as many people.
It's hard. I mean, what I know, one thing that we're talking about for Dice Tower West coming up in just a couple months is that we're going to have some dedicated tables for some of us to hang out at a specific time. So maybe I'll be at such and such table for 2 or 4 hours or something, just playing whatever I'm going to play. But if someone wants to play with me, that's where I'll be. And it sort of spreads us out a little bit. And then if people want to play games with us, that's a good way to do it.
That is a good way to do it. And I tried to, rather than played a bunch of new games, which meant I would have to learn rules or be taught them from somebody else, I tried to grab shorter, quicker games that I was familiar with the rules that I could teach to other people. And that seemed to work out pretty well. I got to teach some dexterity games to some people, not just Strike, but like Catch the Moon, Minute Work, stuff like that. And that seemed to work out pretty well. But just know that if you were on the cruise and I didn't get to play a game with you, I really genuinely wanted to. And I hope I get to play a game with you in the future. Man, finding ways to divide your time is tough on these things.
It is, yes. And I've heard, some complaining in years past that, I wish I could have seen the Dice Tower group because I wish they were in the gaming room all the time. It's like, but it's also, our trip too. And, you have to find that balance between playing as much as possible, but also, my wife was there and she wanted to hang out and have lunch and stuff. You can't just play constantly.
Yeah, no, I ran myself pretty ragged on the cruise, which I didn't realize till I got back. Over the course of the weekend, last weekend after the cruise ended, in 3 nights, I slept a total of 34 hours. So my body was like, we're done.
Yeah, I actually caught something on the way home, like on the plane. I was like, starting to get stuffed up and So that was no fun. But fortunately, I was okay for the course of the cruise.
Ditto. So let's see. We've got a couple questions in the chat. Someone asked, this is relevant for the cruise, at least for me. Someone asked, have you guys tried Wingspan yet? Opinions. So, okay, good. Me neither. So Wingspan was in the library on the cruise, and it was by far the hottest game on the cruise. I mean, the first couple of days, it was gone. And I don't mean one person had it. I just mean it literally, someone would check it back into the library and there would guaranteed be somebody standing right behind them to check it back out again. We put it in the hot games room on some days. There were days where we wouldn't let it leave the conference room, and it was just being played nonstop for 6 days straight.
Yeah, you actually did some volunteer hours in the library. Was that interesting to see what people were, checking in and out?
It was it was neat to see some of the bigger, older games getting checked out, and the newer stuff too. And especially big epic games. I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool that people are checking out these longer games to play. But yeah, some of those newer titles, Wingspan, it never sat in the library once the whole trip. And it was honestly, I liked working in the library too, because it gave me a chance to interact with more people that I wouldn't have gotten to otherwise. So that was pretty neat. Yeah, I was in the library 2 hours every day. Although one of the days, I got to give a shout out to Roy Canaday. He covered part of my shift, not by choice, but because he had to, because the Jamaican excursion ran long. So that wasn't my fault, but I felt very guilty about it because if anyone knows me, I am a very timely person. I do not I'm not late for things. I don't miss shifts. I don't just not show up for stuff. So thank you to Roy for helping cover for me that day, since I was on the schedule and could not be there.
Do you get annoyed with people coming up to you on the cruise, or is it mostly appreciated? Be honest.
100% appreciated. And it might be different for other people, but I still consider myself to be rather small potatoes in regard to board game media. I am not known by everyone, even everyone on the cruise. You would think, oh, it's the Dice Tower cruise. People know who Crystal is. But that's not actually true because I'm not on the podcast. And there are a lot of people who just listen to the podcast. And that's totally fine. So there were plenty of people who, there were some people that I sat down to play games with who had no idea who I was. And that's totally okay. But really, anytime anyone came up to me and said that they appreciate the videos I do or my podcast or anything else like that, I honestly am more excited about them than they are about me most of the time. I think I love it. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy every single time without fail. It's great.
No, I love it. I mean, it's really nice to hear that people appreciate what we do, and it's never a bother. Thank you to everybody who at least said hi on the cruise.
For sure. Somebody said, Crystal, was it you who said you like the Pursuit of Happiness? That was me. I love the Pursuit of Happiness. That is one of, maybe actually it might be my favorite worker placement game of all time. I love it.
Have you played the expansion? I haven't played that one yet.
Yes, the expansion is awesome. I love it. It is really, really cool. Adding the popularity and the social stuff and the different events you can do, it's all wonderful. I would be willing to play it without the expansion because the base game is just that good, but it's not really any more difficult to teach it with the expansion. So once I had the expansion, I've pretty much not played without it just because it's there, it exists, and it's a cool extra dimension to add on to the game.
Everybody says I sound like a Dalek now.
You do actually sound a little bit like a Dalek.
Exterminate!
Okay, that's mildly terrifying. It's so good.
You will play board games!
I cannot wait till you listen back to this later. Oh my goodness.
It's the internet. That's why this is happening. I don't know why.
I mean, right? Let's see. I'm scrolling back through to look at other questions or to see if anybody put their. So somebody said for their celebrity pairing, they would want to play Sheriff of Nottingham with Nathan Fillion. That's a pretty interesting choice. I like that one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, everybody loved your Dalek. Everyone's going crazy right now.
Great. That's at least there's something that came from this.
Somebody asked what the verdict of food on the cruise was. I would say for the most part, it was great. There were a couple of items in the dining room that I was a little disappointed by. Like there was one night that calamari was on the appetizer menu, and mine came out and it was both overcooked and cold. So I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But like overall, food was great. And honestly, the buffet on this ship was better than the buffet on the Carnival ship that I was on back in September. So it was nice to know that if I didn't want to go sit down in the dining room, if I wanted something quick, that the buffet was a good option.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. We did more of the dining room lunches and breakfasts this time, and that was also quite good. All of the options were very tasty, and dinner was always good.
Yeah, and they had free, like a pizza place in the middle of the ship that was free 24/7, and that was always, especially like for gaming, like somebody would run up there and grab a whole bunch of slices and bring it back down to the conference room where the gaming was happening, and we would just munch on pizza. So that was great. And also, I've started my post-cruise diet now because so much pizza.
Yep. Well, we should probably wrap things up for this go-around, and we'll have lots more surprises in a couple weeks. So I guess until next time, I guess you should lead this until next time.
Sure. So until next time, this is not my, I don't know.
You need to say who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Until next time, I'm Crystal Pisano.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been watching Dice Tower Tonight.
Thank you for watching. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. Crystal and I will see you in 2 weeks for another installment. Our show is supported by viewers like you. Thank you. Dice Tower Tonight is produced by Crystal and me with assistance from Tom Vassell, Roy Kennedy, and Rob Seary. USS Discovery's sweet new subwoofer provided by Space Base. Timmy composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff, where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Give us your feedback on the Dice Tower Guild at Board Game Geek on Facebook or Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network. Find something new at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all of us at the Dice Tower,
have fun gaming!
And exterminate! Exterminate!
I really can't wait until you hear this because you're going to be blown away. Thanks for putting up with the technical issues, everybody.